What's up, Scope Nation? Welcome back to WrestleScope, where we deliver the raw truth about everything going on in professional wrestling. And listen, I need you to pause what you're doing right now, because what happened on Monday Night Raw wasn't just stepping over the line, it was destroying it, lighting it up, and hiding what was left. Bronson Reed has completely lost his cool, and the WWE Universe is about to see a disaster so massive that it could change the whole world of Monday Night Raw. Before we jump into this total madness, hit that like button, click subscribe, and turn on those notifications, because you do not want to miss even one moment of what's about to happen. Now, let's discuss what goes down when a 330-pound destroyer decides that nothing and nobody can't be touched. Here's what nobody is saying, but everybody needs to know. Bronson Reed didn't just go after two of the most guarded people in WWE history, he did it with such ruthless, planned accuracy that fans are now asking if WWE has totally lost control of their own wrestlers. Paul Heyman, the wise man, the spokesperson, the man who's been a foundation of WWE stories for over 2 decades, was left hurt and bleeding on the canvas like he was nothing more than a practice target. And Bron Breakker, the second-generation star who WWE has been creating as their next big thing, he got completely crushed in a way that makes you ask if his amazing rise just crashed into a wall made of pure Australian rage. But here's where this gets really debatable, and I need you to speak up in the comments right now. Is Bronson Reed being built as a real main event beast, or is WWE using him to make other stars look good in the most violent way possible before they eventually match him against Roman Reigns or Cody Rhodes? Share your ideas below, because what I'm about to show is going to make you view this entire situation in a totally different way. Let's go back and discuss how we arrived here, because this wasn't just wild confusion, this was weeks in the building, and the warning signals were everywhere. Bronson Reed has been on an absolute rampage since coming back to Monday Night Raw. We're talking about a man who's been on a real path of carnage, taking down everyone who gets in his path. The tsunami splashes, the pure force, the I don't care about my safety or yours approach. Reed has been moving like a man with completely nothing to lose. But here's what makes this moment different from every other giant push we've watched. Reed isn't just hurting people for the sake of hurting. There's reason to this wildness. There's thought behind every move. And whether you support him or dislike him, you cannot argue that Bronson Reed has become one of the most must-watch stars on Monday Night Raw. Now, let's discuss Bron Breakker for a moment, because this is where the tale gets fascinating. Bron Breakker is Rick Steiner's son. He's wrestling royalty. He's got the presence, the fire, the amazing talent that makes WWE bosses see dollar signs. This man has been presented like an absolute powerhouse since arriving to the main roster, crushing legends, beating competitors, and showing himself as someone who could honestly main event WrestleMania within the next 2 years. The Intercontinental Championship reign, the powerful showings, the fire that's similar to his uncle Scott Steiner and his father Rick, Bron Breakker was being set up as untouchable. And that's exactly what Bronson Reed did was so stunning. Because in WWE's carefully built system, there are levels to this game. There are guys who can lose and recover, and there are guys who are guarded at all costs. Bron Breakker has been in that guarded group since day one. But Bronson Reed, he looked at that safety and said, I don't care about your schemes, I don't care about your system, I'm Bronson Reed and I do what I want. Now, let's get to what actually went down on Raw, because this wasn't just an assault, it was a statement. The show is moving along, and Bron Breakker is delivering one of his signature intense speeches. The man is fired up, discussing his power, his future, and how nobody on Monday Night Raw can stop his progress. The crowd is loving it. Bron's got that natural charm, that family history, and that undeniable energy that makes you believe every word leaving his mouth. And then, boom! Bronson Reed's theme plays, and the entire building shifts. The atmosphere changes instantly because everybody knows that when Bronson Reed appears, somebody's getting damaged. Reed walks down that ramp with purpose. No showing off, no playing to the audience, just a 330-pound man with mean plans and zero care for outcomes. Bron Breakker, to his credit, doesn't step back. This is where you see that Steiner DNA showing, because Breakker immediately gets in Reed's face, and these two absolute monsters are eye to eye in the middle of the ring. The pressure is insane. The crowd is going wild. Commentary is going crazy, and you can feel that something major is about to occur. They start exchanging words, the heat is rising, and then bam! Reed throws the first hit and we are off to the races. These two are fighting like their lives are on the line. Hard strikes, powerful power moves, and the kind of toughness that makes you remember why you fell in love with professional wrestling in the first place.
But here's where everything goes wrong. Security tries to pull them apart, officials rush the ring, and for a moment it seems like calm heads might win. But Bronson Reed isn't done. Reed pushes off security like they're kids. We're talking about grown men getting thrown aside like they weigh nothing. And then with the entire locker room trying to bring back order, Reed does the unthinkable. He climbs to the top rope, and with Bron Breakker barely getting up in the middle of the ring, Reed throws himself with a tsunami splash that rings throughout the entire building. The impact, the destruction. Bron Breakker is flattened under 330 pounds of pure force. But it doesn't stop there. Oh no, Scope Nation, it gets so much worse. Now this is where the moment goes from tough rivalry to holy crap, did that just happen? Paul Heyman, the wise man, the spokesperson, the man who's been guarded by WWE management for years, runs down to ringside, and you have to understand the weight of this moment. Paul Heyman doesn't just randomly get himself in situations. When Paul Heyman shows up, it means something. It's either to continue a story with Roman Reigns, to find talent for the bloodline, or in this case, to try and stop an absolute disaster. Heyman gets in the ring, microphone in hand, trying to use his legendary skill of talking to convince Bronson Reed down from the edge. He's doing what Paul Heyman does best, using words as tools, trying to reach Reed's reason, trying to calm a situation that's going out of control. And for a brief moment, it seems like it might work. Reed is paying attention, the crowd is hanging on every word, and Heyman is doing his complete best to shield Bron Breakker from more damage. But then, Reed's eyes move. That cold, planned look comes across his face, and you can see the exact moment he makes his choice. The gasp from the crowd, the shock on commentary, the surprise on everyone's faces as Reed, this unstoppable beast, has his hands on the one person who's supposed to be untouchable. Now let me explain something to those of you who might be newer to wrestling. Paul Heyman getting physically hurt is rare. This isn't some regular manager who takes hits every week. This is Paul Heyman, the man who's been key to some of the biggest stories in wrestling history. When Heyman gets physically involved, it's a big deal, and there are usually huge results. But Bronson Reed, he doesn't care about results. He doesn't care about politics. He doesn't care about the unspoken rules of WWE. Reed sets Heyman in the corner, and you can see the fear in Heyman's eyes. The wise man is begging, trying to talk his way out of this moment, but Reed has gone to a place where words don't matter anymore. And then, boom, tsunami splash to Paul Heyman. The collective gasp from the WWE universe. Commentary is yelling, officials are going crazy, and Paul Heyman, the legendary spokesperson, is laid out in the corner, holding his ribs, fighting for air. Scope Nation, let me tell you something. The result of this assault was insane. EMTs rushed to the ring to check on both Bron Breakker and Paul Heyman. Medical staff was around both men, and the entire building was in shocked silence. This wasn't your typical wrestling beating. This felt real, this felt dangerous, and this felt like Bronson Reed had just kicked a hornet's nest that's going to have huge effects. But here's where we need to break down what this all means, because there are layers to this tale that most people are overlooking. This assault on Bron Breakker just created a blood feud. We're not talking about a couple of matches and move on. We're talking about a rivalry that could headline premium live events. Bron Breakker is not the type of character who's going to let this pass. This man has Steiner blood running through his veins, and if you know anything about the Steiner family, you know they don't forget and they don't forgive. The matches these two are going to have, brutal. We're talking about hard-hitting, rough, intense battles that are going to steal the show every single time. This is the kind of rivalry that creates stars. Now this is where things get really interesting. Paul Heyman being hurt creates a link to the bloodline, to Roman Reigns, to Solo Sikoa, to the entire power setup of WWE. Is Roman Reigns going to answer to his wise man being hurt? Is Solo Sikoa going to look for payback? Is this going to pull Bronson Reed into a feud with the bloodline? Because if it does, Scope Nation, we're looking at main event level stories. Let's be real for a second. Bronson Reed needed this. He needed a moment that makes everyone in the WWE universe, whether you watch every week or you're a casual fan, sit up and say, who is this guy and why is he destroying everyone? This assault on Bron Breakker and Paul Heyman is that moment. This is Bronson Reed's I have arrived moment. This is the moment that raises him from good big man to real main event threat. But Scope Nation, we need to discuss the debate surrounding this entire angle, because social media is blowing up with hot takes, and not all of them are positive. There's a part of the WWE universe that's saying this assault was too much, that it makes Bronson Reed look like a thoughtless monster rather than a smart beast, and that hurting Paul Heyman, someone who's not a wrestler, crosses a line that shouldn't be crossed. And you know what? I can see that point. There's definitely a discussion to be had about whether this assault helps the story, or if it's just shock value for the sake of shock value. But here's my response. Professional wrestling is at its best when it makes you feel something, and whether you loved this angle or you hated it, you felt something. You had a response. You're discussing it. You're engaged with the product. And in today's wrestling world where there's so much content fighting for your attention, creating moments that cause real emotion is completely crucial. This is the take that's making me want to yell at my screen. There are people on Twitter and Reddit claiming that Braun Breaker getting crushed by Bronson Reed is WWE burying here, that it's going to damage his energy, and that he's never going to bounce back from this. And to those people, I say, what are you watching? Getting beat down by a giant heel doesn't bury you. It gives you drive. It gives you a story. It gives you a reason to fight back and show your strength. Some of the biggest stars in WWE history have been in this exact spot. John Cena got crushed by Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam 2014. Did it bury him? No. It created one of the most memorable matches in WWE history. Roman Reigns got destroyed by Braun Strowman multiple times. Did it bury him? No. It made his eventual win even more satisfying. Braun Breaker getting crushed by Bronson Reed is storytelling 101. It's creating hardship for a good guy to overcome, and when Breaker finally gets his payback, and trust me, he will, it's going to be one of the most satisfying moments in recent WWE memory. This is probably the biggest debate coming out of this entire angle. For years, Paul Heyman has been basically untouchable. He's the special attraction, the legendary manager, the guy who talks about violence but rarely feels himself. By having Bronson Reed hurt Heyman, WWE is making a statement. They're saying nobody